Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it's time for our monthly consumer update with the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, but first, a flurry of activity in the Pennsylvania legislature. Let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we almost don't know where to stop with start with what's going on in the Pennsylvania legislature. Joining me, as often is the case, are two of the state's leading reporters, and sitting across from me is Steve Esack with the Allentown Morning Call and Katie Meyer. She's the Capitol Bureau Chief, and she also hangs out with WITF and PA Public Radio. Do I got that all right?
All right.
All right, Katie, let me start with you. We got a very interesting situation going on with a grand jury that's been investigating whether there has been sexual abuse and a cover-up in 6 of the 8 Catholic dioceses. And then the current Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, wanted to release that report imminently, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's been put on hold. So basically, what do we know about that? I'm going to ask both you and Steve that question.
Sure. So we know very little about the actual, what halted it.
Sure.
I mean, what we got from the court was that, there had been an appeal by either individuals or groups who had been part of this report. And so they granted the appeal. They're going to, look at it, look at the case further, and then decide whether to release it publicly. Now, Shapiro, really couldn't say too much about it other than the fact that he is, still pushing to get this stuff out. Yeah. Earlier, though, last month, he did put out a statement saying that the only thing that would prevent him from, talking about this publicly and making the report public before the end of June would be if one of the dioceses or some individual involved filed an appeal, which is clearly what happened.
Now, this is a pretty serious matter. We're talking about 6. Go ahead.
It's 6 of the 8. The only reason Philadelphia and Altoona, Johnstown are not part of it is they've already had grand jury reports done. The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office did 2 of them a number of years ago. The Attorney General's Office did Altoona, Johnstown in 2016. After Altoona, Johnstown, the State Attorney General's Office under Kathleen Kane started looking at the remaining dioceses in Pennsylvania. Now, yesterday, the Allentown, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, and Greensburg dioceses said that their dioceses officially, as well as their respective bishops, did not file this stay of appeal. So as Katie said, it could be individuals, because Judge Krumenacher, who handled the grand jury report in his order, rejecting a similar postponement request, said, community leaders, public officials, and religious leaders are all part of these alleged cover-ups going back decades.
Wow. So it could be a lot of people.
But the big point is, without even attempting to assess what's in it, this could be a blockbuster, right?
I think there's no question it's probably going to be a blockbuster. I mean, the report is going to be hundreds and hundreds of pages long. It's one of the broadest such, studies that have been done in the country, especially, in a state Pennsylvania's size. So I think, it's going to have, very, very wide political ramifications. It could have really severe financial consequences for the dioceses themselves, for various people who are implicated. So, I think there's a lot of people who don't want this thing released. Yeah. But there's many people.
But it's going to get released.
It's indefinitely postponed right now, and it's also not clear what they're going to do.
Well, I was just going to say the legal argument behind this is the Pennsylvania State Constitution has a phrase in it that says citizens are entitled to a good reputation. And the defense bar in Pennsylvania for years has complained that Pennsylvania's grand jury law is so broad that it does not give, quote unquote, due process to people who are criticized in grand jury reports but not criminally charged. So they're arguing that the Supreme Court should postpone this. However, Pennsylvania law that deals with juries does not give a defendant or anybody else the right to ask a court to postpone this. Right. So if the Supreme Court says, yeah, we're going to completely shut this thing down, under Pennsylvania law, I don't think they're entitled to do that. However, you see the court all the time, make up their own stuff.
This is huge potentially.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Does it get released?
I don't want to say whether it gets released.
Okay, so
the
that's
Attorney General.
Important to say that we don't know. Both of you agree. We don't know if if the report is going to get released. Is that your point?
That is our point. Like I said, the court has been accused by plenty of people over time making up laws.
All right, we're going to run to a quick break. When we come back, it's unbelievable. It looks like the state budget, as this show airs, will have been completely adopted with the governor on board after 3 years of either late budgets or not being able to, and finalized late budgets, I should say. They can pass a budget, but how they pay for it's another matter. We're going to get to that topic after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities.
Yeah, I got Blake, my grand.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. Well, it's time for our annual conversation about the prospects for the passage of a state budget. Sometimes those discussions have gone on for months. Joining me as often is the case, two top reporters, Katie Meyer and Steve Esack. All right, Steve, as this show airs, the Senate has not yet voted, but it's expected to pass the budget. It only had 10 negative votes in the House of Representatives. There are 203 seats in the House, right? 203.
Yep.
Only 10 negative votes. So basically, first of all, what's in the budget, just in broad brush?
Well, what's in the budget is it's $32.7 billion, which is roughly 1.7% more than the current year. And what is in it is an election year package.
Yep.
When you something get down, for everybody?
Something for everyone.
But not much for anyone.
Yeah, okay.
There's an extra $100 million for the basic education, which is a huge political item for both Democrats and Republicans.
Sure.
There's also money for more special ed. There's money for more technical career education, as well as more money for
school safety.
School safety, yeah. And
that's a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a big issue. And now the school safety one will be in the form of a block grant, roughly, that they're still working on how to figure it out. But really, it is an election year budget for everybody, and it is they want to get out of Dodge and enjoy their summer and not have to worry about all this.
Did it surprise you? I mean, the governor got right on board. Now, he recommended a 3% hike, about $1 billion increase. This is what, in the 500 and some,
about 700 and some,
700 million increase. So it's close. But what isn't in there? Not a single new what?
Tax.
Yeah, go ahead, explain.
No severance tax. That's the big one that Wolf's been pushing for.
Yeah.
But listen, am I surprised that he got on board so fast? No, because again, he wants to get elected. The guy hasn't signed a single budget in his tenure. I think he wants to sign one finally. So, it was definitely in Tom Wolf's best interest to get this thing done quickly. And if there's more money in there for education, doesn't raise spending too much, or really doesn't raise spending. Yeah. So, I mean, it was a good one for him. What does surprise me is that no conservative Republicans really raised a stink about it. You saw some of them refusing to vote yes on it. There is, I said there's really no spending. There is a spending increase. It's based on new tax revenue we're expecting. But also Steve mentioned, that it goes up 1.7% over last year. That actually is like 1.7% over what we ended up spending last year. It's like 2.2% over what we anticipated.
But it's basically in the inflation range, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Yes.
But it's not way out of whack with inflation.
No, it's not. And Pennsylvania's economy is doing better.
It's doing better.
And let's not forget, last year they began the budget talks in a huge financial hole. They got rid of that by borrowing a ton of money from various places, the tobacco settlement
move money around.
Yeah, exactly. And they're moving money around again this year, as they always do.
Yeah.
All right, before I let you go, we got to talk a little bit, Katie, about gun control measures.
Sure.
There's been huge debate over what would finally happen. If they do anything, what is it likely to be?
If they do one thing, it's probably going to be a measure that it's only like a quasi-gun control measure. It's about protection from abuse orders. And this basically makes it more difficult for somebody who has had a protection from abuse order filed against them to have a gun. They have to put it into the custody of police or some other official instead of a family member or a friend. Yeah.
Good point.
So, and they also have to turn over the guns more quickly, that sort of thing. So this is a bill that a lot of people have gotten behind because it seems like common sense, right? And it doesn't really restrict gun laws except for in a specific instance.
What about the so-called bump stocks?
Well,
explain what that is first to our folks.
Well, a bump stock is this mechanism that you connect to the gun, and it moves back and forth really fast, and it makes the trigger, if it's a semi-automatic trigger, turns it into a full automatic. Right. Now, the House Judiciary Committee very narrowly on Wednesday, 14-13 vote, voted to ban those type of mechanisms. So that moves to the full House, but with a scant few number of session days, it kind of becomes a symbolic vote that it's unlikely to pass. And you can see that, the narrow margin that it passed on, it doesn't bode well, even if it gets to the full House.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank both of you for coming in. This is an excellent update. There's other subjects, but we'll have to take them up maybe next week. All right, coming up, our important consumer update. Stay with us.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, welcome back. Well, for our popular consumer update, we're going to get into the whole business of the importance of a college education and what it costs as we're now beginning to think about the fall and the freshmen, new students entering college life, but other folks who have been in college for a couple of years. Joining me to talk about that is John Murga. He's the CEO of the Hidden River Credit Union. And I asked you before, tell the folks where that is.
We're in Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And of course, one of the regulars, Patrick Conway. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. All right, Patrick, I'm going to start with you. What we do know, and it's a big concern at colleges all over the country about how to keep student debt down, what to do to make resources available, college debt.
It's crazy. I've got a son, my oldest is going into college in August, so we're sort of going through this with our family for the first time. College tuition has increased 7% annually since 1987. So that's a 7% increase on average, compounded year after year. The cost of college is just through the roof, and people have to make difficult decisions on how to pay for that.
Right.
And borrowing for college is, obviously the way most people do it, and you've got to be, balance the value of that education with the significant debt that can come with it.
Yeah, I do think colleges are gaining much more awareness over the last couple of years, providing more scholarships, but you're absolutely right. There's no doubt that the cost has gone up. And so basically what happens is that students have to go to A, to loans, and then B, they end up with debt. Talk about that.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities for children to, I shouldn't say children, young adults, to get the financing that they need to essentially complete their college education. And there's things that they can do. I mean, I think initially, a lot of times students are apprehensive about that whole process. And I think that's where credit unions, ours in particular, we try to fill that niche by providing a local source of financing, that gap that's left over after scholarships, grants,
So
the federal student loan.
If I understand, is basically what you're saying, when you go to take out a loan, you know, the rates are competitive, but you have to be careful about what you end up doing this, signing on the dotted line for.
Correct.
What are the rates of payment? What are the interest rates? Do I got that?
Yes, and I think in particular what happens with students, in particular for that gap financing, I think that's really what we're talking about, because there is a lot of opportunity for funds for young people to have, but it's that gap financing. And for a private university, I believe it's somewhere like $130,000 over a 4-year period. For a public university, it's somewhere around $30,000. And we try to fill that gap for the student when they're going to school. But that cost is still a complicated business for both the parent and the student. Right. And the FAFSA that's involved with the federal program that you have to go through for the free student aid, it's a problem. And every October 1st they have to do that. And there's that issue of going through that process and then also trying to complete the debt.
Good point. Now, you also have some tips, Patrick, to manage student loan debt. They're very important. Let's go through that so the folks know this.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the first thing is to look at what your family can afford to pay. Scholarships, obviously, if it's an academic or financial need, can also come off the top. And then shopping, you know, you've got your government-supported loan programs, and then the private institutions, credit unions, and community banks can be helpful as well. And I think you've really got to look at, you know, the mix of that funding to make sure that it meets your family's budget and you can pay for the tuition.
All right, we're going to run to a break, and we come back. Having said that, there's still great value in going to college. It's not for everyone, but for those who want to go and who have the ability to go, finding where you want to go and what niche you locate in terms of the higher ed community is important. But I want to get into that, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with the folks from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. We're talking about a number of aspects as we get ready for, believe it or not, halfway through the summer. We just started summer, but halfway, we're into June now, and pretty soon, end of August, the students will begin to return to the colleges across our state and country, and we're talking about a variety of things relevant to college education. And Patrick, I want to point out, college isn't for everybody. We all admit that. But let's talk about some of the advantages. Number one, there is a value to it, just in pure economic terms, right?
Absolutely. You know, and it's not for everybody, but and as expensive as it is, the value is significant. You know, the typical average salary for someone with a high school diploma is $30,000 a year. Right. You know, with a BA or a BS, a college degree, that's in the mid-50s, and with an advanced degree, over the career of an individual, that could be in the low 80s. So there is a value clearly, and it is important for a lot of folks to get that college education.
Yeah, please
interject. I was just reading the other day that over a lifetime of someone's career, it could be up to $1 million in difference between someone with a college degree and someone that doesn't.
But it's just not about the money. I think we all want satisfaction in what we do, and I've been arguing lately. Now, you actually are in the business of providing the loans and the student assistance.
Correct.
One of the things that we see is that there's a variety of places that students can go, and in terms of finding employment, a variety of fields. So it doesn't always have to be purely academic. It can be on the vocational and technical
Oh, absolutely.
edge. Are you seeing more of the technical and vocational?
Yes, I think so. And, you know, the more you look at what's available in the labor markets, I mean, you know, we all need that, you know, good plumber or the good electrician. And, you know, these are highly skilled careers, and, you know, they're not like they used to be. And it takes an education and a lot of experience to do that. And I think you're seeing a lot of diversification that way. Where people are starting to choose those types of careers again. And quite frankly, they're employable people for a long time with a great skill. You know, it never runs out. It's like anything else.
One of the great things about Pennsylvania with more than 100 colleges and universities is that you can pick. Now, I'm at a liberal arts school, and you know, obviously I'm biased here. It's a great liberal arts school. There are other colleges and universities that have put in these more technical and vocational programs so that you have a variety of options, and I'm sure you're seeing that when people apply, right?
Yep, absolutely. I think you're going to see more of that as we go into, I mean, look, things are changing, and, you know, you see the service economy continues to grow as opposed to manufacturing and things like that. But you do see those specialized professions, those skills, you know, the opportunity to provide a career to someone that's high paying, that's you know, satisfying to somebody. And, I mean, more of that is growing, and I think a lot of those skilled trades are part of that.
The other aspect about it is there is a relationship between what you do, the degree that you hold, and unemployment. Talk about that.
Correct. That's true, too. In addition to the differential in terms of your earning potential and your salary over the course of your career, there's a higher unemployment rate for those that are less educated. So if you look at a high school diploma, you know, I think it's 4.5%, 4.7%.
Right.
And that fluctuates depending on the investment that you've made in the education. So generally speaking, that the correlation is there as well.
Yeah, so if you don't have even a high school graduate, you're far more likely to be unemployed.
Correct.
That's right.
I mean,
That's correct.
And
the data support that.
No,
the
go ahead.
data certainly support that. But I think it's important, too, that there are intrinsic values for going to school. I mean, let's face it. You know, I always remember my grandfather telling me that, you know, when you receive your education, it's something that someone cannot take from you. You know, you can have a career, you can have a family, you can have a home, you can have lots of things that provide you satisfaction, but an education, once you have it, is something that nobody can ever take from you. And I always remember that.
Yeah, and there's such a variety out there. I mean, that's what's, I think, very important, is that there are choices that students can make, right?
Absolutely. And I know with my son now going into his freshman year, just looking at the majors and the curriculum that are available and the institutions that are available and the myriad of choices, it's exciting because that education really is a key component to the rest of your life.
Yeah,
and
it's an investment in yourself. I mean, it just absolutely is.
Well, I want to thank both of you for coming in. This is an important topic, and as I said, before we know it, the students will be returning to school, and this is probably need to do all of the planning well earlier than just getting to start.
Earlier the better.
All right, we're getting out of here. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.